What's up, Flaniverse? We have another two-game slate, the Bucs and the Lions, the Texans and the Seahawks tonight. On this show, we're just going to be talking about the two-gamer, so the main slate on DraftKings. I, of course, will be live again in a few hours to break down both this slate again, and then, of course, both showdowns as well. So if you are interested in hearing about how I'm thinking about the showdowns, that will be later on. On this show, though, Adam and I are just going to break down the main two-game slate on DraftKings, the usual style, going position by position, quarterbacks, running backs, receivers, tight ends, defenses. We'll take any questions you have as we go. We are dealing with Amazon Web Services is down, so as a result, cannot run the Sims right this second. At some point during the show, maybe it'll be back up and we'll be able to run the Sims. But currently, we are across the web dealing with Amazon Web Services being down, which will interrupt some things. I have finished my research for the slate, at least, so we can still talk about it, all the usual stuff. Adam, how did your Sunday go?
Normal, not great. It felt like most other Sundays this year. Like a lot of stuff I did worked or, went well. I think like on the afternoon slate, my highest owned quarterback was Nix. On the main slate, my highest owned quarterback was Herbert. I had a bunch. Keenan Allen was my third highest owned receiver. Like a lot of stuff went well. It was just like things didn't get not everything came together in the same lineup. And then, like I had a lot of Breece Hall. Easily could have been, Judkins or Swift, like any other running back, could have been in a lot of those lineups, but happened to be Breece Hall, so that killed me. On the afternoon slate, I built my lineups and then thought about it a little bit more and was like, with how much I'm kind of guessing at like what Washington's going to do, maybe I should just like have a commander in every lineup and assume that like they're going to score points somehow and it's going to be good for whoever scores those points. And so that kind of tanked the afternoon slate because none of them were actually necessary to have.
Yeah.
Like Ertz scored, but then every other tight end scored a lot more. So that limited my ceiling there. It was just another slate where like coming out of it, I was like, oh, I feel like I played reasonably well. Didn't go my way though.
The main slate went horribly for me yesterday. The morning showdown went really like I doubled my money, which pretty rare for a showdown slate, despite like not having anything at the top. It was just like I had so many caches and like so many that were circling the top, just none of them got there. So I'll take it, but obviously was sweating a lot of things where it was like I could have taken down one of the showdown slates on the morning, and then same thing in the evening. Like my three big takes for the slate were just jam Christian McCaffrey and Bijan Robinson. I guess that's one take. And then Kyle Pitts was like, I'm really high on Kyle Pitts, Bijan Robinson, Christian McCaffrey. Those were the three that you really needed. And then from there was like, I have no idea. Like none of this value looks good. I was like, I think kickers and defenses like make sense on a slate with zero value. And that's what you needed. So I think I won money on that other than flash drafts, which did not go well, but didn't get there. It was like, I had all the right pieces. Everything you needed was exactly what I was like on, but just didn't get the right pieces.
Yeah. I don't know if you saw, but Yuta ended up duping himself in first place. I had that lineup, except for he had CMC captain, Bijan flex, Niners defense. I had Bijan captain, McCaffrey flex, Falcons defense in the same lineup. Like,
yep. No, that was I had a lot more of Falcons kicker and defense than 49ers. So that was the one thing. It was like really like the kickers and defenses just kind of sided with the Falcon side because the 49ers defense was so beat up. It was like, all right, this just makes more sense to me. And then it was like they had the stupid like 10-second runoff at the end of the first half. Like it was just like so close to being a much better showdown and just did not quite work out. But the main slate for me was terrible. My biggest take on the main slate yesterday was, why the hell does Mason Taylor not project better than he does? Like he should be a target hog, and he ended up like 3 catches for 30 yards, and that was all with Tyrod Taylor. Like Justin Fields just didn't target him at all, even though they were actually throwing the ball. It was just, I don't know, just bizarre.
Yeah, the Jets. Somebody in our Discord yesterday had asked, like the 1v1 Breece Hall versus Judkins, and obviously like my answer and Brian's answer was just like, they're the same thing. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, right.
And I said, I was like, I thought about saying, well, you do have a little bit more risk with Hall because the Jets are entirely possible of just not functioning without Garrett Wilson. And it was like, but are we really going to pretend that the Browns aren't capable of just completely not functioning? And then, that's exactly what you got from the Jets, where Hall did nothing, Taylor did nothing, like Fields got benched, nobody did anything at all.
Yeah, that was just the brutalest. I mean, might be better for them with Tyrod Taylor. I don't know. He threw 2 interceptions. Like the upgrade in terms of quarterback rating was like 11.5 for Fields to 13 for Tyrod Taylor. I guess on the one website, one web page I looked at, I was like, Jesus, that's not pretty there.
Not that I think, Justin Fields is a great quarterback or would be a great quarterback or anything, but is there any quicker path to career suicide than going to the Bears organization and having a defensively minded head coach and then leaving there, obviously stopover in Pittsburgh, but ending up in the Jets organization where you again have a defensively minded head coach?
It seems like there are ways to use him. Like he's a freak athlete. Like I don't know what is. At some point, I think Justin Fields still could be like a serviceable quarterback. Not again that I think he's a great quarterback, but just like he's a dual threat. Like I don't know.
Yeah.
I think he could be a lot better than he is if somebody could figure out how to use him.
I mean, my take on quarterbacks in general has, for a very long time, pretty much been if you're talented enough to get drafted in the first round, you're talented enough to be a good quarterback in the NFL if you land in the right spot. And if you don't land in the right spot, you're going to look absolutely horrible and flame out and be done in 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, it is. It is kind of sad how much the situation affects him there. What else? We are going to get. I do want to congratulate Conby. That is obviously not the best run up, but he said I had this. So he posted in chat last night where he was in second place at the time, had the sweat of a lifetime, was in first in the millie, dropped to second for the end, and finally finished fourth for 25,000 is so brutal. Fourth in the millie should be 75,000 at least, 100,000.
Yeah.
25,000 is pretty brutal, but he says Keenan over QJ would have locked him first place. That sucks, but also hey, fourth place in the millie, really impressive. Nice score there. So congrats on the money. All right, let's get into quarterbacks. And Adam, I told you this before the show, but for those who have watched these shows, you may have noticed there are times when I have not finished my written work and I'll ask Adam questions and then not listen to him at all while I'm working on my written work. We're going to be doing that here for just a little while today. So forgive me if I miss anything. I will try to multitask and listen to Adam. Let's do quarterbacks. The 2 quarterbacks in this first game, Tampa and Detroit, Baker Mayfield and Jared Goff, project pretty significantly better than the quarterbacks in the second game. They're also significantly more expensive. Baker, though, 6,600 projected for 19 fantasy points, 31% ownership. Jared Goff is 6,000 projected for 18.6 fantasy points, 33% ownership. What have you gotten of these 2 so far?
So right now, getting pretty close to the field, I had like 37% ownership projected to Goff, around 30% to Mayfield. I have 37% Goff, 22% Mayfield. Obviously, I think they both look good here. You have the highest team total on the slate for Detroit. You have the second highest for Tampa Bay, slightly ahead of Seattle. So they both look good here. Obviously, we're waiting on receiver news for Mayfield as well. But it does look like he'll at least have Mike Evans back. So he'll have at least one real receiver. Maybe Egbuka plays. For now, I'm assuming that he doesn't. But you at least have one real receiver out there for Mayfield, which is good. And he's just played incredibly well this year. You get him, in a dome, which is obviously nice as well for this game in general. So I like Mayfield. Wouldn't be upset if I got a little bit more, but I do have more Goff than him right now. Obviously, just a lot of ways for Goff to succeed. You do run the issue with the Lions of them being a team that's perfectly happy to run if they can, but Goff, plenty of guys for him to get the ball to. Tampa Bay has been a favorable matchup for opposing quarterbacks so far this season as far as fantasy points go. So have Detroit, both rank in the top 10 in that matchup. So that looks good. As far as, I guess, neither of them run too much. Mayfield, runs a bit more than Goff, but I'm getting a little bit more Goff. I think that they're very similar plays, though, where I just like both of them.
Yeah, kind of the same page there. Sorry, how much you say you're getting overall of the 2 of them? Like
37 Goff, 22 Mayfield.
Okay, so you are, kind of a stand, but they are. Is Mayfield even your second highest quarterback then? Regardless, you're probably not that high on Mayfield over one of the others because
he's just behind Stroud, just ahead of Darnold.
Yeah, okay. But Goff kind of being the big one there. Goff is projected for the most ownership. Like you said, in terms of schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed to the quarterback position, these are 9th and 10th against quarterbacks for the Bucs and the Lions. So pretty nice matchup for both of them. Like you said, Mike Evans back, maybe Egbuka for the Bucs. I don't know if that's gonna. Do you anticipate that would change much if Egbuka does end up playing in terms of your quarterback exposure?
I don't think it would change much at quarterback. Obviously it's a bump for Mayfield in terms of he has another real receiver to throw to, but clearly the bigger like projection changes would be for guys in the passing game, receivers.
That is funny. Adam doesn't remember what I told him before the show started. Yeah, fair enough. We don't listen to each other. That's how it is. We do these shows twice a week. It takes a while. Anything else on these first two quarterbacks?
No.
All right. Houston, Seattle. Again,
you do have some injuries for the Lions secondary, which is good for Mayfield also.
Okay. Yeah, I forget who it is, but I was just looking at that. We have like several are at least questionable.
Yeah.
Okay. Michael says, an honest question for ShipMyMoney. So please don't get offended. Is your strategy to just stay close to the field on ownership on everything? Every time I've heard you, you always stay close to the field. I feel like that's not entirely true, but honestly, I wouldn't say that that's like, I think that's often the case for both of us because the field has gotten just super efficient. And like we talk about often, like it's really more about lineups than players. So then you can stay with the field in terms of ownership, but still make better lineups than the field. But do you have any response to that?
Yeah, like it's not my strategy to stay close because that would imply that I am intentionally doing it. It's more what Neil just said, where the field plays well in general, and there's not typically a ton of spots where some guy that I think is actually a great play is not getting ownership because people just know what good plays are now. I would say that generally I'm more in line with like optimal rates or chances of success. But again, because the field is efficient now, so are they. Where you'll see, but generally, like where I do end up deviating the most from the field is a spot like yesterday on Judkins, for example, where I had like 20%. He was in a bucket of like running backs that I had a good amount of, but he happened to be the guy out of that bucket that the field was like, oh, we're going to play 40%,
Right.
even though I think he was like a 20 to 25% play. So normally it's those kind of guys that I end up the furthest away from. But yeah, it's not like I'm not actively looking to play close to the field or not close to the field or whatever on individual players or anything. It's just generally the field plays well. And if if you're somebody in 2025 that thinks the field is making tons of mistakes on players, you either are probably the best DFS player or you're deluding yourself because the field generally plays pretty well.
Yeah, that's a good. I think it's like I think if you and I had done these shows 5 years ago, we would have a lot more players where it would be like, I'm going to be 4x the field on this player. Like when the field was less efficient, like both of us are like kind of exploitative players where we're looking for things that the field is going to get wrong and then we're going to exploit that. It's just that the field has gotten so much sharper that it's tough to find those. I have one player on this slate that I really love that I think is going low owned. But other than that, it's kind of like, yeah, for the most part, it seems like the field is getting it right. Really hard to like, people ask me for like this player versus this player. And it's like, I don't know. They look about the same most of the time. I think the field is just pretty sharp at this point. So it really comes down to trying to make the best lineups.
Yeah, the other example, I guess, the sort of the inverse of like the Judkins thing. There have been a lot of like afternoon slates this year where I've taken pretty big stands on guys like, Marvin Mims or Alec Pierce, like really volatile receivers that are just getting like 2% ownership because I think that they're like 10% to be a winning play. And so I end up playing, 20, 25% of them. But, generally when you're talking about like your main, Jared Goff, Baker Mayfield, CJ Stroud, like I don't know anything the field doesn't know. Like they're all just solid plays.
Yeah. That's he says he's always been told to take, he's always heard take stands and he's been successful doing that. That is not something that I necessarily advocate for. Like looking at best ball, same thing. You'll hear people say like, if you are just 8.3% across the board, you're paying the rake. You're just paying the rake if you don't take stands. And I've always been an advocate for like, no, if I just build good lineups for best ball, like then staying with the field, being better in terms of lineup construction rather than just like huge player stands. Like, yeah, you're probably not going to have a like double the expectation in terms of like advance rate, but you're gonna have much better shot at winning big money. Anyway, it's kind of the same in DFS where it's like not really like that's not exactly how it works.
Yeah, well, and one other thing to keep in mind with the taking stands thing, in my mind, like that is kind of like again, it's different. Like if there's a spot where like the field is just missing something, like this will come up. This comes up most often for me in NBA, where I just think something completely different than the field. Like the field thinks these two centers are going to split 24 minutes. I think this guy's actually going to play 32, and I'm just going to end up jamming that guy because my inputs are completely different. You don't run into that too often in NFL, especially now that, again, projections are good. Like, maybe 5-6 years ago, there were spots where you could just be like, wow, nobody realizes this wide receiver is going to be the one that gets the bump, but that doesn't really happen anymore. Obviously it doesn't happen in sports like baseball because they give you a lineup, but I also kind of think about it in terms of like, if I'm playing 5, 10, 20 lineups, like, yeah, obviously I'm going to potentially end up more concentrated on a player than the field is because there's only so much I can do to diversify in 5, 10, 20 lineups. But if you're talking about playing like 150 lineups in the same contest, also, you have to keep in mind that there's only one first place. And so if there's, some 2% Alec Pierce, and I think he's going under owned, I still probably don't want like 150 Alec Pierce lineups, because even if Alec Pierce does well, I'm just like competing with myself for first place. And if he doesn't do well, I'm completely dead and losing every entry or whatever.
Right. That's a good note. Yeah. That you are, the more you are going way overweight on one player, you're competing with yourself. Interesting angle. Let's move on to the other wide receivers. The other quarterbacks. Houston, Seattle, we have CJ Stroud and Sam Darnold. Now you get nice price savings here, and I think we do have some nice spend ups at other positions. So there is some benefit to CJ Stroud being 5,200, Sam Darnold being 5,400. You get them at lower ownership. Darnold projected for 22%, CJ Stroud projected for 16% ownership. But as you can see, it's the game total is 12 fewer points expected for Houston, Seattle than Tampa Bay, Denver. You said that you're getting to about the same amount of Darnold and Stroud as you are getting to Baker Mayfield. Do you have any kind of lean on which of them you'd like to play?
So I have 23 Stroud. I have 17 Darnold. So slightly more Stroud than Mayfield, like 5% less Darnold. Clearly you prefer the game in the dome, but again, kind of like going back to that previous comment, like if I were to just do something like, well, I prefer this game that has the higher total in the dome, and I'm just going to jam Goff and Mayfield, like everybody knows where the game is. All of that stuff is factored into projections, and you can run stuff that gives you range of outcomes for players and all of that. And Stroud and Darnold are still going to be the winning quarterback a pretty decent chunk of the time out of 4 quarterbacks. So I am still getting to them here. I'm a little surprised that it's Stroud and not Darnold that's popping from this game for me, just because if we're talking stands, like JSN, I think is the guy that probably is has like the biggest gap between like prop market and projection for me. So I'm kind of surprised that he's not like pulling a lot of Sam Darnold along with him. Not that you need Darnold with JSN, obviously, but I kind of thought that I would have more Darnold popping up than I do. But Stroud looks fine here. Like the matchup against Houston is very difficult for Darnold. The issue for Houston, of course, is that we still really don't know if CJ Stroud is any good. More importantly, I guess we don't even know if this offense is any good. They've been very frustrating in general, not consistently being able to move the ball, to get Nico Collins the ball. You're running, your backfield is Nick Chubb and Woody Marks. You don't have Christian Kirk for this game. So there are a lot of negatives here. And then you also going into Seattle, lowest total on the board. There's plenty of negatives here, but as a result, you do also have like 16, 17% ownership coming into a $5,200 CJ Stroud. That's a cheap price tag for a quarterback that is capable of playing well, does have Nico Collins as a pass catcher. So I do like the upside that he gives you at that price.
Yeah, kind of interesting just because of the price tag. And like we said, we do have some nice pay ups here. It is the worst possible matchup, as you see here, for Sam Darnold against Houston in terms of schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed per game. And then a totally middle of the road matchup for CJ Stroud. Although notable that Seattle's defense has gotten healthier. They were missing some key pieces last week, and they were a little bit more exploitable. Now they've gotten their key defensive pieces back. So not quite the same. Are you in your run of the Sims? Do you see anything interesting in terms of stacking? Like, are you getting to, when you play Sam Darnold, you're getting to triple, quadruple stacks, or like anything? Probably not. I would guess that would actually be the opposite, where if you're playing Sam Darnold, you're probably just getting to a lot of the pay ups that project really well. But I'm curious if you're seeing anything interesting as far as stacking for any of these quarterbacks.
I don't have like a really easy way to be able to tell. Kind of just eyeballing it, it looks like with like Darnold, mostly double stacks, probably a lot of JSN, obviously, and then like a cheap piece because they don't have other expensive pieces. So, that's I guess another high upside reason for Darnold is like you get, I think, the best wide receiver on the slate. No disrespect to ASB. But then you also get, you can go to AJ Barner, you can go to Cooper Kupp, you can go to Elijah Arroyo. Like you can get a second cheap piece and then still have salary to get to like the Lions playmakers and stuff like that. But no, I mean, I don't see anything like too interesting there. I would expect that all of these quarterbacks are pretty heavily stacked. Like none of them are giving you tons of rushing upside or anything like that. And it's kind of like the same thing for the Bucs with Mayfield, right? Like obviously Mike Evans is the guy that you would prefer to be stacking him with, especially if we assume that Ibuka is out. But then at the same time, like if you're going to need to find value somewhere, why not throw in Tez Johnson or Sterling Shepard or Kate Otten and, pair them with Evans?
Right. I don't want to belabor the point, but I just want to, TTID says, I was taught that when you do 10 or less lineups, that since you don't have enough lineups to hedge, it's better to take stands. I think like I don't know who taught you that, and I'm not meaning to like say that they're wrong per se, but I think like the sharpest DFS players that I know, like with the best math backgrounds, like Shady Advice, Nerdy Tenor, would disagree wholeheartedly with that. Like you want your lineups to be diversified and like not take major stands. Obviously there are some circumstances where it's like this player is just by far the best play on the slate and you should have a lot of them, but I think that the sharpest like mathematical minds playing DFS would tell you that is kind of the opposite of what you should be doing.
Well, it's also a trade-off. It's a risk tolerance problem too. The more you diversify, you are sacrificing some level of expected value, whether you are good at evaluating your expected value is a whole separate problem. But in theory, like you're sacrificing some level of expected value in return for diversification and not taking a zero on the slate as often, allowing you to stay in the game longer and giving you more paths to success on a particular slate. I don't know him personally. I don't know what his actual strategy is, but like if you look at Giant Squid, who is clearly a successful player, he plays a lot more concentrated than most high level players do. And really what all that's going to do is like when he's right, he's going to have a ton of shots at winning. And when he's wrong, he's going to take a bath and he's just going to have bigger swings than the people like Shady or Nerdy that are playing more diverse.
Yeah, and he also has just a massive bankroll, so he can take those huge stands, which also is obviously a factor to some extent. But I think even with the massive bankroll, like Shady would disagree with that approach. But that's also something where it's like they're both like crazy smart, and I think that's something that they like disagree about like openly. So I don't know, but
well, I mean, I think Shady, I don't remember if it was in an Endgame video or I think it was, I don't know, but whatever. I've heard him somewhere kind of say that like they disagree in terms of their approach, but also acknowledge that like he's still playing on basically the like Pareto frontier, and he's playing at like an efficient point. He's just playing at one that is a lot riskier than, like, not to put words in his mouth, I'm paraphrasing, but like just a lot riskier one than like he would prefer.
Right. Anyway, anything else on quarterbacks?
No.
All right, let's move on to running backs. Starting and kind of an interesting running back slate, Adam, because we have interesting like multiple like playable running backs from every team on this slate. I think the Bucs, maybe you could argue the least with Sean Tucker getting the least workload there, but then obviously you can play Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery with Dan Campbell coming out and saying they want to get more touches to David Montgomery. You've got Woody Marks and Nick Chubb, who the past two games have, kind of flipped in terms of who's getting the workload. And then Zach Charbonnet and Kenneth Walker. The team is studying other teams that use multiple running backs. They're really insistent that they want to use Kenneth Walker. So pretty interesting running back slate. Starting with the Bucs, though, are you getting to? I mean, Rachaad White projects really well. Are you getting to any Sean Tucker, and how much of Rachaad White are you getting?
I'm getting to 71% Rachaad White. He is my highest owned player from that game. He's right now my second highest owned player overall. So getting to a lot of him, he's had the clear leg up on Sean Tucker so far. Obviously, that can change any given day. And with the way it feels like NFL goes in general, it'll change on the 2-game slate where it really matters a lot. But I don't really see any way that you can project it to not be Rachaad White is the clear lead back with Tucker mixing in more so than, any sort of true split. And then White also is the guy that you expect to get the bulk of the receiving work, both because of what we've seen so far with Bucky Irving out and also just his profile, what he does. Like he was the passing down, receiving back when Bucky Irving was in. Sean Tucker doesn't really have that skill set. It would be much more surprising to see Sean Tucker take on some sort of receiving role than it would to just see Sean Tucker take half the carries for some reason. So, that obviously is valuable. And then again, this game is just likely to be higher scoring than the other one. So that looks good. The price tag at 6,400 on him looks good. As far as Sean Tucker goes, I am not getting to him right now, like 2% ownership projection, 4,400. If you're playing the, $20, $500K to first, it's at least defensible, I think, to just go there and hope that he ends up in the end zone a couple times. But for me, he's not getting into lineups, at least right now.
Unsigned says, if we were to take Dan Campbell at his word in this matchup, would you consider not playing the Lions backfield at all or be very underweight? You mean because he's talking about getting David Montgomery more involved? Or is there some other?
I assume that's what they're talking about.
Yeah. I mean, I guess you could, but like Jahmyr Gibbs projects really well. I guess we can talk about the Lions when we get there. Let's finish. I guess that will be next. But Rachaad White, in the past 2 games with no Bucky Irving, 31 carries for Rachaad White, 7 targets on 63.5% route participation. So really, really strong usage. And then Sean Tucker, 9 carries in those 2 games, 3 targets. Did you say, are you getting into any Sean Tucker right now?
No, he's in that group of guys that, like, if you want to play him at 2% owned in the massive lotto, clearly there's a path for him doing well. But I don't have him right now. And sort of just like trying to think about recent comps for him. I would say it's like a poor man's Tyler Algier from, well, I guess yesterday too, but also the 2-game slate, I think it was last week, where like Algier has had a bigger workload behind Bijan than Tucker has had behind White, but similar where he's like clearly the backup running back. He has some touchdown equity, but at the same time, like you saw the Algier touchdown on that 2-game slate, and I was actually over the field on him, so I was really excited. Like, oh, I just got this 5% on touchdown from the cheap running back, and it was essentially irrelevant. So like that's kind of the problem you run into again, since White is very likely to be the primary pass catching back. You probably need this to turn into some sort of like actual split in addition to Tucker getting in the end zone.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's a weird running back slate in that like there's only 2 running backs who project for 12 plus fantasy points in Rachaad White and Jahmyr Gibbs. Other than them, like it is kind of wide open as far as other running backs could make it into the flex. I also think this is unlike I think the last slate was a pretty good like running back in the flex, like very obvious running back in the flex. If I remember right, maybe it was a different slate, but this one I think pretty open to wide receivers in the flex. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And then we got a question from could be Travis, said, hey, Adam, asked this earlier, not sure if you saw it. How much higher of a rushing share roughly does Tucker need to raise his projection past 7?
Yeah, I was playing around with that while you were talking. If you got him to like a 40% rushing share and you assume that his receiving work goes up at least a little bit as a result of being on the field more, that probably gets him to like 7. So yeah, somewhere around like 40% of total carries.
Okay. Right. And right now you've got him at 23%. So that's a fairly significant increase that you would need to make him like project for 7 plus fantasy points.
And it's probably actually a little bit lower than 40%. Because like if he were to get 35%, then like his rushing touchdown equity goes up a bit. His pass projection would go up at least a little bit as a result of being on the field, but probably somewhere in like 35-40%.
Okay. In terms of schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed, the Bucs have allowed the 14th fewest schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed, and the Lions have allowed the 8th fewest. So kind of a tough matchup for Rachaad White as far as schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed. And then moving on to the Lions side, we've got Gibbs, we've got Montgomery. Gibbs has the best running back projection on the slate. He's 7,500. Project for 18 fantasy points, 66% ownership. Montgomery is 5,500, projected for 10.5, 14% ownership. maybe I'll read off the quote on David Montgomery from Dan Campbell, because I thought it was like, I don't want to read too much into the quote, because it sounded like, yeah, we'd like to get him more work. I don't know. Let me just read off the quote instead of interpreting it beforehand. So on the backfield, so this is on the 14th of October, on the backfield split between Jahmyr Gibbs and Dave Montgomery, Dan Campbell said, "We certainly don't want either of them getting too much. I know that it's a little more tilted toward Jahmyr right now, and a lot of that comes in the 2-minute reps. I would like to balance him out. I would like to give David some more, find a place to get him a few more. We were hoping we were going to be able to do that in the second half of the Chiefs game some more, but it turned into a different type of game." So to me, it's like they're not like dead set on evening out the running back share. It's like, yeah, we'd like to get a few more carries to Dave Montgomery, but when it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. So I don't know. I guess I don't read too much into that quote. Do you? What's your takeaway from that? And what
That's
do you do?
my takeaway too. Like, this is a very good offense. They have been for years. I don't think that they're in like meetings being like, shit, we need to find things to change.
Right.
He probably would like to get Montgomery touches more consistently. But like I take that like 2-minute drill part specifically. I don't hear that as like, we're going to look to change this and have David Montgomery get some of those touches in the 2-minute drill. I take it as like, it happens as a result of the 2-minute drill, and that's how it is. Because that's Jahmyr Gibbs' skill set. Like, I don't think they're going to like actively, change that up. Yeah, I took it more as just, and also like, I don't know for sure. I don't know the context, but like, I assume he was asked a question about it. He probably didn't just like walk in and be like, "Hey, our offense has been really great, but really, I hope that we can get David Montgomery some more carries."
Right. I think you're right. Like the tone. This is from the Coach Beacon Discord. I think the kind of implication was that he was asked on the backfield split right now. So yeah, I think that you're right about that. So ultimately, how much are you getting to of Gibbs and Montgomery?
50% Gibbs, 27% Montgomery. They're just easy to get to because, like you said, running back isn't very strong this week. And like when you put even let's say that like we are really concerned about the coach speak here and this turning into like a true timeshare in the backfield, which that's actually, as an aside, another reason I'm not overly concerned about it. This backfield's already a timeshare mostly. It's not like David Montgomery has been getting 15% of the carries and, oh shit, if he gets 35%, Jahmyr Gibbs is in trouble. Even if you give Montgomery a few more carries, Gibbs is still fine, especially because he has the pass catching role. But also, like, on this particular slate, you have a Kenneth Walker Charbonnet timeshare, a real timeshare in Seattle. You have the Chubb Marks, nobody knows what the hell's going on timeshare in Houston. So even if this gap narrowed, it's still the second most appealing like running back split behind Rachaad White seemingly being the clear one in Tampa. So I'm still going to end up getting a lot of it. And again, like they do different things. They get their different ways. Gibbs in full PPR on a 2-game slate where running back is weak can get it done just on passing work potentially while Montgomery gets rushing touchdowns. Like I'm not overly concerned about that. So I am getting to about 50% Gibbs right now. I'm getting to about, I think it's a 27% Montgomery. I don't have an easy way of seeing if I have any with them together, but I actually like, I wouldn't love playing them together. I have like 21 of 150 lineups have both of them.
Yeah, I was gonna say I have no issue with it. Like,
yeah, no, neither do I.
Yeah,
especially because again, like you just don't have that many running backs. Like even if you tell me that Jahmyr Gibbs had a really good game, is David Montgomery's projection moving that far down and like falling that far behind Houston running backs or Seahawks running backs?
Right. Yeah. So I don't know. I think both look pretty good. Funny, Jenna says, is it his birthday or wedding anniversary? So we have a reason to play Montgomery. It is true that the narrative worked out here with Montgomery going back to Cincinnati. I don't think we have any. I think I did hear like it's Kenneth Walker's birthday. Maybe I think we do have that going for Kenneth Walker. If you're looking for a narrative, somebody looked that up. I think I heard that listening to Pete's stream a little bit earlier, but I just heard it in passing and didn't double check it or anything. So don't actually know if that's true. But yeah, I don't believe we have any kind of narrative reason other than, I mean, it could be that like he really loves Montgomery and he would like in some scenarios give an extra carry to Montgomery where it's like could go either way. I guess I'll give it to Montgomery this time, but yeah, I'm not reading too much into the quote. both look like strong plays. Glad to hear that you are getting them together, because I was thinking like, yeah, I have no issue with that. I also don't think that it's going to be particularly uncommon today. Maybe it will be. I don't know how many hand builders are going to be like, no, I can't play them together. But yeah, I think they're totally viable. Anything else on the Lions? I guess in terms of schedule adjusted, I already said the schedule adjusted. Bucs have allowed the 14th fewest schedule adjusted fantasy points per game to running backs. I think we've covered the Lions well enough, unless you have any other notes here.
Yes, I will just point out because that conversation is happening in chat right now. For one, you have to keep in mind like context. None of the defenses on this slate are bad at defending the run. So like you can't just say, oh, I don't want to play the Lions. The Lions running backs, the Bucs defend the run well, because you're just not rostering running backs today, I guess. But also, if you look at what the Bucs so far have actually done from a schedule adjusted fantasy point standpoint, they've been very, very good limiting fantasy production in the running game. Fourth fewest schedule adjusted fantasy points per game against the rush specifically. They've actually been an above average matchup for running backs in the receiving game. So if you did want to use that data point to make a decision, it does point you toward Gibbs.
Okay. Yeah. Interesting. And Gibbs just like projects really well regardless. Like he just has an elite workload. If we look at the full season, the running back split, like you said, like it's somewhat of a split backfield, at least in terms of carries. It's 87 to 65 for Gibbs over Montgomery. They've played 6 games. And then also targets 25 for Montgomery, 25 for Gibbs, 10 for Montgomery in 6 games, which like relative to Gibbs, you can see like, yeah, he's getting a lot less of the work. But then like you look at some of the other like starting running backs on this slate, and it's like, oh, David Montgomery actually has like a better workload than like a Kenneth Walker, or, we'll
Right.
go over these other teams, but like he has a really strong workload regardless, even if it is a lot less than Jahmyr Gibbs. This is a team that wants to run the ball. I think so far on the year, I want to say 27th in terms of pass rate over expectation. Let me double check that. 27th in terms of pass rate over expectation are the Lions. So they prefer to run the ball, and they like their running backs. All right, let's move on to Houston running backs. And I actually haven't looked at the split specifically for the past 2 games, because I know that in week 4 it was Woody Marks week. We all thought Woody Marks is rising up. He's going to be the running back going forward. And then it was Nick Chubb, I believe, in week 6. But I'll bring these numbers up. But Woody Marks is 200 more expensive than Nick Chubb, projected for 12% ownership to Nick Chubb's 9%. How much you get into of the Houston backfield?
I'm only getting to 10% Marks and 5% Chubb right now. I think those numbers are fine. Like, again, they're 2 of the lower owned running backs. I think they're the 2 lowest owned running backs out of the main running backs here. So like they make sense from a projection standpoint. I would say that like they're the ones that I'm looking at kind of thinking like, can we get creative there? Like I want to at least take a harder look at how they're being projected right now, because if you can find something and get it right, there is a big potential advantage there. Like if you can find a reason and be right about it that they lean on Woody Marks in this game, or that they lean on Nick Chubb in this game, then you can find an edge, because every site is going to project this to be a pretty ugly split where like Marks is getting some rushing work, but Chubb is getting rushing work as well. And then Marks is getting most of the receiving volume. So I do think it's a spot that I want to kind of double check and make sure that the best projection that I can come up with is the one that everybody's using, which it probably is, but it is an interesting spot where there's a lot of volatility here, in the sense that like Woody Marks is probably better than Nick Chubb. And if they just have the game, what was it, 2 games ago, where they just turn it over to Woody Marks, like he's an amazing play. But then you had everybody kind of made the assumption, like the logical thing here, we already know Woody Marks is better. We think Woody Marks is better than Chubb. Then we just saw Woody Marks go out there and smash. So now it's probably just the Woody Marks show, and the Texans are just like, no, we're just not going to care. So like, who knows? You do have them coming out of the bye, which, is a narrative you could use for Woody Marks, I guess. But right now I'm getting 10% Marks, 5% Chubb. I would say I'm probably a little bit, I would say I prefer Marks, just because of like the receiving workload is more valuable than the rushing workload. So he has a little bit more value in general. And then, if he were to, I think there's a better chance of Marks taking over a big amount of Nick Chubb's carries than there is Nick Chubb taking over a big amount of Woody Marks's receiving volume, I guess.
Yeah, I agree with that. This filter is not working. What did I do wrong here? Doesn't look like I did anything wrong. Oh, maybe they haven't trailed at all. Okay, could that be right? Have they led or tied both of the past 2 games in their entirety? Because that must be it, because I'm getting to nothing when I sort by trailing game scripts. So they've been leading apparently the past 2 games or tied for the entire game. That's pretty interesting. But yeah, over in leading game scripts, we've actually had, I was looking for, like, are they playing Nick Chubb more when they're leading?
Right.
But no, Woody Marks has played more snaps when leading. They 21 carries to Nick Chubb's 19. But yeah, looking at the past 2 games. So in week 4, like you said, Woody Marks seemed to take over, 17 carries to Nick Chubb's 13. He had 5 targets on 43.8% route participation to Nick Chubb's 2 on 21.9. So then I don't know about you, but I kind of made the assumption that, Woody Marks has surpassed Nick Chubb. He's going to be the guy going forward. And then in week 5 against Baltimore, Nick Chubb outcarried Woody Marks 11-7. Woody Marks only played 21.2% of snaps to Nick Chubb's 33.3. Dameon Pierce also got involved in that game with 7 carries. And then Woody Marks just 1 target on 28.6% route participation. This is one of those that it's a head scratcher where it's like, I guess we just don't know what happens in practice. Like there are situations like maybe he has a bad attitude and the coaches just don't like him that much. You just, there are things that you can't know. And this is one where it's like, it seemed like it was obviously going to be Woody Marks and then it was not. So I'm with you though. Like I don't see Nick Chubb having like the same kind of upside for more work that is like passing game work. Like he can get there, obviously he can get 16 carries and score a couple touchdowns or something, but Woody Marks seems like the one who's like, he could just randomly get 7 targets in a game, and that is really valuable.
I don't think Nick Chubb has a ton of like role upside. He obviously has upside in the sense of like, it's a football game and players are going to hit their ceiling sometimes. He can run for 100 yards with 2 touchdowns. He has that sort of upside, but I don't think that there's a lot of like, I think there's a much lower probability that this time tomorrow you're looking back and saying, wow, Nick Chubb was way more involved, period, as a pass catcher and, whatever. Like Nick Chubb was the receiving back. Holy shit. Like I think there's a much lower chance of that than where it's just like, oh, Woody Marks RB1 now.
Right. Silas brings up a good point here. Post by rookie bump. Yeah, I had it wrong.
2 minutes ago.
I don't listen to you though. We've established this. Post by rookie bump for Woody Marks. I had it wrong. I was thinking that their bye week was in week 5, but their bye week was in week 6. So yeah, I don't know. Woody Marks though, I think is both of our preference here, especially if it does come to just 12 and 9%, like not that much of an ownership difference. So how much do you say you're getting to of Woody Marks and Nick Chubb right now?
Right now, I only have 10% Marks, 5% Chubb. You did accidentally almost make a good point when you were talking a minute ago, by the way. Definitely pay attention to inactives. If Dameon Pierce is inactive, both Marks and Chubb look a lot better. Pierce adds a whole other level of don't know what's going on here because he seemingly was just completely not involved. He's been inactive for multiple weeks. Then he's active, but not only is he active, he got like 16% of the rushing workload. So that's another one where if the rushing workload is going to be a 3-headed timeshare, and then Woody Marks is going to be like the primary receiving back, then they all just look shitty, but Marks looks the best. If you take Pierce out and you're still assuming a split in carries between Chubb and Marks, like they're both just going to look so much better because that's an extra couple carries to each of them.
Yeah, that is. Is he on the injury report, Dameon Pierce? Or are you just thinking because he's been inactive before he might be?
Just because he's been inactive for most of the season.
Yeah, just making sure I wasn't missing something. Yeah, that is a good note. I was going to say like Dameon Pierce is not playable, is he? Like he's only 4,000, so it's like I guess he's the one who is potentially like ascending in terms of workload.
Yeah, I mean, I would play Sean Tucker before I play Dameon Pierce.
Yeah, same. All right.
Although I do have a good amount of Pierce in best ball, and
same.
So far things have been going very well for my late round best ball guys lately. Like it was a Freiermuth week, Dowdle in general. Johnson had a big game.
Yeah, so you're not even being facetious. Yours are going well. Mine
Yeah.
are. I guess I have some. I don't know, but yeah,
Devin Neal
lot
just
of
came
misses.
to life 30 minutes ago.
Yeah, I started drafting a ton of Kendra Miller, so things are going poorly for my late
Yeah.
round picks right now.
Now I just need
Miles,
Marshawn Lloyd's hamstring to recover by week 16.
yeah, good luck with that. All right, final running backs. The Seattle Seahawks again. Kenneth Walker, Zach Charbonnet. All of the efficiency metrics seem to point toward Kenneth Walker being much better, and the team should use him more. And the team is just they don't want to. They bring up George Holani in quotes about how they're using their running backs. So they just refuse to lean on Kenneth Walker. But maybe they're just tricking us. Maybe at some point Kenneth Walker does take over. He's 5,600, projected for 32% ownership. Obviously has big spike or splash play upside. And then Zach Charbonnet, 5,100, projected for 20% ownership. What are you doing right now with Seahawks?
Unhappily playing both of them. I have 28% Charbonnet right now. I have 22% or 21% Walker. Charbonnet's $500 less, which is probably why I have more. He has been incredibly inefficient this year. He can't keep being that inefficient, I don't think. No. So, I mean, there is obvious positive regression there just in the sense of he can regress to being slightly bad instead of the worst running back in the NFL. He's been more involved as the pass catcher is probably also the reason that I have more of him. 48% route participation last week, 50% the week before that. Walker was at 28 and 29. So you're seeing, that Walker is involved. And last year we saw the really big bump for Walker going from not a pass catcher to actually being involved. And then he's still involved this year, but we are seeing Charbonnet run more routes. So I think the combination of cheaper price tag and PPR projection is what's moving Charbonnet a little bit ahead of Walker for me. But really, I think this is just another spot where unless you can find a good reason that you think you should play one of these guys a lot more than the other, they kind of just both they both project as pretty average-ish plays, but there is additional volatility, which can mean additional upside. I think compared to other guys, like Bucky Irving can only get so much more work than he's already being projected for. Gibbs and Montgomery, it's going to fluctuate, obviously, within a game, but like you're already projecting Gibbs to have a big role. You're projecting Montgomery to have a relatively big role, and he's probably not going to just surpass Gibbs. With Seattle, you can kind of like Houston. There is just the chance that in this game, Walker gets 4 times as many touches as Charbonnet, and if you knew that going in, you'd play him in every lineup. So they do become just solid like range of outcomes type plays because they're both cheap as a result of the assumption that they're going to continue to basically split down the middle, and there is some chance that just doesn't happen.
Yeah, so somebody in chat just asked, what is more likely, Charbonnet becomes more efficient or Walker gets more carries? I think Charbonnet becomes more efficient because that just has to happen. Yeah. but Walker getting more carries certainly in play. Man, I would hate
they are also related there. Like if the first one does not happen, then eventually the second one does.
Yeah, true. This is a good note that over the past 2 games, Charbonnet has become more involved as a pass catcher, at least running more routes. Yeah, I do also have to admit that occasionally you make a good point. I had not seen that.
Oh, I thought you were making that point as your own.
No, I was
I had said it a minute ago.
No, I'm giving you credit. I'm giving you credit. I had not seen that the route participation for Charbonnet has gone up over the past couple games. So that is notable that Charbonnet is taking on, even though just 3 targets to 2. So has not really manifested itself in terms of fantasy points yet, but the workload potentially increasing there.
Yeah. And I mean, it's not necessarily sticky from week to week either. Like if you look at them, side by side, like week 4, so like week 5 and week 6, you had Charbonnet running slightly less than twice as many routes as Walker. Week 4, they were almost the same. Week 3, Charbonnet was out. Week 2 was 2-1 in Charbonnet's favor. And then week 1, they were about the same. So what we haven't seen yet this year, not to say it won't happen, what we haven't seen is Walker running routes ahead of Charbonnet. We've seen them either running similar routes or Charbonnet pushing like a 2-1 route advantage.
Ultimately, the Texans defense has allowed the 3rd fewest schedule adjusted fantasy points per game to running back. Just a really tough matchup overall for the Seahawks. Houston really good defensively, so it's not the best matchup. As TTID says, maybe playing Gibbs Montgomery together is the hack. I mean, sounds like you were getting to a fair amount of it in a 150 set. So
I think that's 21%. I think.
Yeah, reasonable.
I think like 15%. I had like 21 out of 150 lineups.
But then, as Jenna says, everyone knows you have career days on your birthday. So maybe we break ties to maybe this is the game they decide to feed Kenneth Walker on his
Well,
birthday.
if you want to go down the schedule adjusted fantasy point rabbit hole, talked about, it looking better for Gibbs than for Montgomery because Tampa Bay gives up more receiving production than rushing production. Opposite here, Houston basically league average in terms of fantasy production allowed on the ground to running backs, well above average at preventing fantasy points through the air to running backs. So that would point you toward Kenneth Walker.
Yeah, true. Interesting.
In addition to it being his birthday.
Yeah, in addition to it being his birthday. All right. Have we covered running backs well enough?
Yes.
All right, let's move on to receivers. Well, what do you think the odds are of Egbuka playing tonight?
So I've heard that there's a real chance.
Yeah. Listening to Pete's stream, he put it at 55%. I look at projections. A lot of them just have him out.
I put it at 30.
Yeah, I think that seems closer. Like it'd be dumb for them to play him with a hamstring strain. Like, why would you play Egbuka right now? But yeah, so my lean is that he doesn't play, but it is something we're going to have to monitor, and it's really impactful and annoying that we have to monitor Egbuka. Currently, you have him out, so you have the splits with Egbuka out. Obviously, if Egbuka comes back, it hurts everybody else in the Tampa passing game. Let's break it down first as you have it with Egbuka out. Mike Evans, 6,500 projected for 54% ownership. How much are you getting?
Also with the Egbuka thing, just my lean is that, like, to me, it seems like he's probably progressing well with the hamstring injury. And so they're just saying, like, yeah, maybe he's going to show up Monday night and be like, didn't even know I had an injury and we can play him. But that's kind of the way I'm reading it, is like probably not going to play, but we'll see. It is the first game at least, which is good.
Yeah.
As far as getting to, I think you asked me about Evans, getting to 30. Nope. Yeah, getting to 39% Evans right now. He's a tricky one to project, I think. So assuming Egbuka is out, on the one hand, Evans' targets per route run in the games that he played without Godwin last year, which is a very similar situation if Egbuka is out to what we have tonight, was like 0.33 targets per route run or something like that off the top of my head. Just targeted extremely heavily by Mayfield, as you would expect. And we haven't seen that this year because of Egbuka being there. Even when Godwin was out, you had Egbuka, so it wasn't an apples to apples situation like it potentially would be tonight. But then the thing that makes it more difficult to project is you do have Evans coming back from injury. So for one, you have exactly how many routes is he going to run. You can't just blindly plug him in for 90 to 95% route participation like you would without an injury. And then two, is there any sort of drop off in his ability to get open, in his conditioning, in all of that type of stuff coming back from an injury? So I'm hesitant to project it like I would if this were just a fully healthy Mike Evans with no Godwin, with no Egbuka. And the prop market, I think, reflects that as well, although obviously that is also baking in the does Egbuka play risk. I think his prop receiving yards line is like 62 or 63 and a half. Right now, I think I have him at like 68 or 69 yards. So like I like him here, but I do think there's just like extra volatility. We just saw with George Kittle last night. It's the same kind of thing where you don't really know what to do with it, because like I felt dumb for projecting George Kittle for like 12, 13 fantasy points last night, because he clearly just was out there not ready to be a factor in the passing game. But I would have felt equally dumb if I projected him for like 9 points and then he was targeted 10 times when his team has no other wide receivers. It's kind of the same thing here with Evans, where like, if you just go in and say, well, he's definitely going to be rusty, blah, 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 there's a real chance he just gets targeted 12 times. But at the same time, there's a chance that he's out there just like running wind sprints, and you just have like a shortened, more condensed passing game going through like Shepard and Otten and Tez Johnson. So ultimately, kind of lands in that middle where it's like, 5 catches, 70 yards, something like that. But there is massive upside and a low floor, all things considered.
Yeah, it's I kind of hate it here with the Bucs, because it's so hard to break down because we just don't know what the usage is going to look like. So sorry, how much you see you're getting to of Evans right now?
39%.
That seems about right. Like, I think if he does come in at 54%, I would want to be under the field just because of the big unknowns here. but not like a huge stand. So I think that is about where I would like to be on Evans. He does have 27 targets in 3 games played. Of course, like you said, though, those are the first 3 games of the season he's been out. Who knows who's going to come back to his regular role.
Just to like speak to the volatility here, because I just happened to notice it. So right now I have him projected for like 16 fantasy points on DraftKings. I think ETR has like 17 and change, and SaberSim has like 14. So it's just like,
Yep.
it kind of just speaks to that whole range of like exactly how confident are you in Mike Evans' health.
Right. Really, really tough to project there. And then beyond Evans, we've got Sterling Shepard would be, I guess, the wide receiver 2, and then you've got Tez Johnson. I guess you could call him the wide receiver 2 if you wanted to. What are you doing with the receivers beyond Mike Evans here?
Yeah, so I have like 23-24% of both Tez and Shepard. I think that they're both interesting here. If you want to get into the schedule adjusted fantasy point stuff, the Lions have been a really good matchup for opposing slot receivers, which would look very good for Sterling Shepard. Also, again, they are banged up, and you do have Brian Branch suspended, which is just going to weaken that defense in general. And you don't want, if you have like a healthy Mike Evans, you never want to look at like schedule adjusted fantasy points and be like, oh, well, Sterling Shepard's a better play than Mike Evans, because he's not. But it does set up, as a good spot for him. We've seen, we saw Tez Johnson get some MVP chance after scoring a touchdown last week. So, obviously he's going to have a bigger role, assuming Egbuka is out. So I'm getting to both of them, 20, 25% of the time.
I was not bringing this up to fact check you. I was just bringing it up because I thought that I would see that Sterling Shepard ran like 75% from the slot. That's not actually what happened in week 6.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Cameron Johnson, 50% slot route participation. Tez Johnson, 47.6. Sterling Shepard down at 38.9, which is definitely not what you expect from the Bucs. I don't know what happened there, but interesting that I guess it could theoretically benefit any of them. Yeah. But yeah, I think so. Sterling Shepard projected for 17% ownership, Tez Johnson 16%, and then Cameron Johnson is kind of just a dart throw. 3,400 project for 5.5% ownership. And you said you're getting to 20% of both Shepard and Tez.
Yeah, like 23, 24.
Okay, so a little bit over the field there. Are you getting to any Cameron Johnson?
I have like 1 out of 150.
And then if Egbuka does come back, do you have any sense of what you're going to do? Like, are you still going to play?
If he does come back, I think the biggest marginal drops are probably to Tez Johnson and Cameron Johnson. Like, I think Shepard becomes the actual slot guy at that point. Maybe Tez Johnson just jumps him. Like, I guess that's possible. But my assumption, if Egbuka plays, is that you have Evans and Egbuka both, as the top 2 wide receivers. Shepard probably runs the third most routes, probably something in like the 60% range, as opposed to like the 80 that I'm expecting right now. Tez probably comes in around like 40, 45%, somewhere in there. And then Cameron Johnson falls off to like, 10, 15%.
Yeah. Okay.
And that's off the top of my head. So like,
yeah, we're just guessing. Like we don't know. There's so many different ways this could go. When's the last time we had Egbuka and Evans? Yeah, not since week 3. Really, really hard to like. You can't even like look at this and be like, all right, this is what they did. I guess last time it would be Sterling Shepard was the wide receiver 3 at that point, but also a lot happens. Young guys get better, whatever. So I think most likely it would be Sterling Shepard as the slot guy, as you said, but we don't really know for sure. Anything else on Bucs receivers?
No.
Detroit.
I guess just as an aside, the other part of that whole Mike Evans conversation, like exactly how healthy is he? How much is he going to be targeted? Blah, blah, blah. Like if you are somebody saying, well, I think he's just going to be a full go, keep in mind that you should be lowering your expectations for Tez Johnson, for Shepard, for Kate Otten. Like those are all guys that suffer if it is just we're going to pepper Mike Evans game.
Right.
And vice versa.
Yep. Good point. All right, wide receivers on the Lions. It gets a little bit easier here, a little bit at least. Khalif Raymond, I think, is actually still on the injury report, so it's possible he is just out. Adam, I we broke down this game. I think I broke it down last week for maybe Showdown. And one of my bigger stands was that Khalif Raymond might just take on that wide receiver 3 role, and he wasn't being projected that way. Based on the coach speak, it kind of seemed like Tesla is like, oh, he would benefit a lot if Khalif Raymond can't go. And then Khalif Raymond was active and ran 3% of the routes. So I don't know if Tesla has just passed him or if he was still limited in that game, what the issue is there. But those are kind of dart throw options. Anyway, the two we really need to think about here are Amon-Ra St. Brown, and then JMO, and then we can talk about if we're played any Tesla. But Amon-Ra, 8,200, projected for 58% ownership, has 50 targets on the season, in a nice matchup for receivers. What are you doing with Amon-Ra St. Brown?
Yeah, getting like 65% of him. Obviously, he looks really, really good. He's my second highest owned receiver behind JSN, and you clearly can make an argument for him to be number one. Most appealing game environment. Not that it's a great matchup in general, but most appealing game environment. Obviously really good, going to get targeted a ton. Even in like his disappointing game the other day, I don't remember if it was a Sunday night, Monday night, whatever, Thursday night. Still, it ends up with like 9, 10, 11 catches. It was just for like 45 yards. But clearly just going to look very, very good. Jameson Williams, the price tag's nice. Obviously big playability. Doesn't get targeted a ton. You have St. Brown dominating targets, but then you also have Gibbs. You also have Laporta, who's seen an increased target per route participation so far this season as well, or per route run rather. So still though, he's 5K, like has upside. I'm getting 35% JMO. I'm getting the 60 to 65% ASB.
Okay. And then JMO, how much are you getting there?
It hasn't changed since 3 seconds ago.
How much you say you're getting?
Like 35.
All right, I'm past my deadline for this expert survey, so I'm really trying to focus and get it done. Okay, so Amon-Ra St. Brown, JMO both look good. Are you getting to any Tesla? Like if we look at the route share report for the Lions, Tesla up to 58.1% route participation last week. That's after Dan Campbell said, like, yeah, if Khalif Raymond can't go, Tesla would benefit significantly. And then again, Khalif Raymond ran 3.2% of routes. So maybe Tesla has just passed Raymond. I'm not sure how to read this situation, but pretty promising to see the rookie is starting to run more routes. How much interest do you have in Tesla?
Yeah, I don't have either one right now. I think either of them, as far as like your low owned hope that something good happens play, is fine. And to your point, like just guessing at what's going on here, because on the one hand, like, yeah, maybe Khalif Raymond was still banged up and that's why they didn't really use him at wide receiver. On the other hand, he was returning punts. So how banged up was he? I mean, maybe it was just like, well, he's banged up and so we don't want him to do everything, but we think he's more valuable to us. He's harder to replace as a punt returner than as a wide receiver. Like that's entirely possible. And so maybe this week the routes just come back. But my expectation was that you get more Khalif Raymond this week than you did last week, but still less Khalif Raymond than Tesla, which again, that's kind of just guessing. Neither one of these guys is heavily targeted. Like you're talking about a basically touchdown dependent wide receiver, which is never a really fun place to be. But yeah, to me, there are guys that if I'm playing small field, I'm probably not even considering. If I'm playing a massive field lotto, I'm considering them, but still probably not getting there. Like, I think I'd rather play Cameron Johnson. I mean, I have a Cameron Johnson lineup at least over them. There's like, I don't have, I'll say already, I don't think I have Torrey Horton, but like, I'd rather play him. There's no real room. There's volatility for Tesla and Raymond's role within the context of each other. Like, we don't know who's going to run more routes, but you're never going to get, oh, Tesla was running ahead of Jameson Williams, or Tesla was targeted ahead of ASB, or anything like that. Whereas, right, like, at least with Tampa Bay, like if we assume Magbuka's out, there's some chance that it's just like, oh, wow, Cameron Johnson took stuff away from Tez Johnson, or took stuff away from Sterling Shepard that we didn't expect. Like, that can't happen in Detroit. It can't really happen in Seattle either, as far as like JSN and Kupp aren't losing anything to Horton, but you can have Horton take routes away from like Arroyo or something, where right, like that, it just can't happen in Detroit.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like there is no like moving up the depth chart, or moving up the pecking order, at least for Isaac Tesla. I think like in a 150, I think I'll probably have more than the 1% he's being projected for here. I would take my shots on Tesla over Raymond if they're going to get the same ownership, and just kind of hope that the trends continue there. But yeah, there's no real moving up the pecking order. Houston, Seattle. we'll start with Nico Collins, and then we'll get into my favorite play of the slate. I wonder if you'll be able to guess which of these secondary receivers is my favorite play of the slate on the Texans. But we'll start with Nico Collins. He is 7,100, projected for 47% ownership. Tough matchup here with Seattle, or actually middling matchup so far this year. What is it in terms of schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed? No, I'm not. Oh, it's actually a strong matchup so far. Never mind. Wrong about that. But Seattle healthier now than they were last week. So far in the season, 7th most schedule adjusted fantasy points per game. 2 receivers. How much are you getting into of Nico Collins?
Getting like 50-ish percent, 52%. So I was kind of laughing as I've been looking at player exposures, because I feel like even more so than usual on this slate, I've just been like neck and neck with the field on everybody. But yeah, getting like 52% Nico. And this kind of goes back to everything else where it's like, yeah, it's not a great spot. They have the lowest total on the slate, et cetera, et cetera. It's still a 1-game sample size where you have 4 teams to choose receivers from, and you have Nico Collins. He's a very good receiver. He's likely going to lead the team in targets. I want to be getting to him. Like, I don't have any reason to be saying like, oh, I hate Nico Collins here. Seattle, like you said, and like Chad has pointed out, is getting healthier defensively. Playing in Seattle in general sucks, but it's still Nico Collins. It's a reasonable $7,100 price tag, so I like that. That puts him, $800 less than JSN. It puts him $1,100 less than ASB. He projects behind both of those guys by quite a bit, but also when you're talking about wide receivers in general, and just stud alpha wide receivers specifically, the range of outcomes is still pretty close. Like, median projection is going to be higher for JSN. It's going to be higher for ASB, but Nico Collins is still fully capable of, 30 plus fantasy points.
Right. Yeah. Not like my favorite pay up option on the slate, but also somebody that I don't want to take a huge stand on. So I am with you on Nico being like, probably close to the field. And then we have Jaden Higgins, Xavier Hutchinson, Jalen Noel, and I guess Braxton Berrios. Do you have any guess which one of these is my favorite on the slate?
I'm going to go with Higgins.
You are wrong.
Really? Noel?
Jalen Noel. So Jalen Noel, let me make the case for Jalen Noel. We have coming into the year, Jalen Noel was like, he will be the slot receiver. He should be the slot receiver on this team, but he was behind the slot demon, Christian Kirk. Kirk outs week 1 and 2. He played a little bit, but they had Justin Watson running most of his routes from the slot instead. Now Justin Watson out as well. So we have if you look at for the season for the Texans, and here I'll pull up the all games. If you look at the slot route participation for the Texans on the season, let's see. We have Justin Watson in his 2 games. Then he got hurt in that second game, or after that second game. 77.4% slot route participation. Christian Kirk 72.5%. Jalen Noel 62%, and then it's all the way down to Xavier Hutchinson 22.8% slot route participation. So they clearly view Jalen Noel as a slot receiver, and like Xavier Hutchinson runs a little bit, Jaden Higgins runs a little bit. I think that Jalen Noel is by far the most likely to take a big step up as the slot receiver here, with Christian Kirk out and Justin Watson already out. So he's not being projected for any ownership. Like I've seen some places it's like 1% ownership. I think the highest I've seen is maybe 5%, and that's I have not looked at what you actually have it projected at right now. But I think Jalen Noel is could step in and run 65-75% of the routes here as the primary slot receiver.
Yeah, I think that's a fair argument. I would say that if it so I'm getting to a lot of Dalton Schultz, which is kind of the same coin. Dalton Schultz in weeks 1 and 2 ran the most non-Justin Watson slot routes for the team. Was targeted 5 times in the slot. You could certainly see more like Harrison Bryant plus Dalton Schultz. But I'm with you. You should see increased route participation for Noel. I have him at 45%. Maybe I should probably be a little bit higher there and then take a little bit away from Higgins. So I do agree with you. There is that path. I do also think that you probably just see a good amount of Bryant and Schultz.
Yeah, I mean that certainly is within the range of outcome. It's one where it's if he were not being projected for so few fantasy points and so little ownership across the industry, I wouldn't be like, yeah, you need to slam this guy if he was 20% owned. It's just like he's not being projected like the primary slot receiver. And I think that is the likeliest scenario, that like at least in terms of the slot route participation, he's running the most and like he sees the biggest bump in route participation today. Like I think that's the likeliest scenario here.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Okay. So like, yeah, it still is like very likely to fail. Don't get me wrong, but it's just like he's being projected as though it's like, yeah, they're just going to split it with these guys. Maybe Hutchinson runs more routes, or I don't know. So I think that he's not getting the bump that I think he should be getting as the primary slot receiver here. So yeah, Noel is I think my favorite play on the slate, or favorite contrarian play on the slate at 3,300. But then you do have, I think Higgins and Hutchinson can also like benefit indirectly from Christian Kirk being out. Like if Noel is not running any out wide, then maybe Higgins gets a few extra routes there, or Hutchinson gets a few extra routes there. Higgins got better draft capital. He's only 3,500, 4% ownership, looks pretty good. Also Hutchinson 3,900, 4% ownership. Do you have any stand on these other receivers for the Texans?
No, I had like 11% Higgins. I had like 2% Noel. I probably will get a little bit more Noel now. And I do think what you're saying is noteworthy in that like Higgins is projected for quite a bit more ownership than Noel, and doesn't necessarily get like a massive bump here. So, and they're similarly priced. So like this is a spot where, I think if you wanted to say, I'm going to play, if Higgins is getting 10% ownership and Noel's getting like 2, where it's just like, okay, well, I'm going to play 10% Noel and I'm going to play 2% Higgins, like something like that makes a ton of sense.
Yeah, exactly. Just like not playing him, 30% of your lineups, but like significantly Orfield. Yeah, Boss President, didn't you just say Noel is his favorite contrarian play? To be clear, like not somebody that I'm like I need to have him in half my lineups, but I think he's going overlooked right now as a guy who should run a lot of slot routes. Anything else on receivers?
Obligatory, you mentioned that Xavier Hutchinson's probably going to run a lot of very useless routes.
Yeah. True. All right. Let's move on to.
Oh, I guess. Would you put any? I mean, I guess it's a narrative to bring up if people want to do it. What if coming out of the bye, Jaden Higgins is neck and neck or ahead of Hutchinson now, and Noel is the slot guy and Hutchinson's wide receiver 4? Like, not that there's anything I think like pointing to that being the case necessarily, but what if?
It certainly could happen. I mean, we could see that, and I think maybe let me pull up the route share report, because we might have seen something where like Hutchinson is running maybe ran slightly fewer routes.
Hutchinson has been between 68 and 72% route participation every week this season.
Okay, so that has not happened. So I'm seeing by the fantasy points data 62.9 in the most recent game, but prior to that in week 4 it was 71.9, which is most of the season. So yeah, no real trend there.
I think he also scored twice in his last game.
Did he seriously? I didn't remember that. Okay.
There was definitely a game where Hutchinson scored twice. Yeah. It was the Baltimore game where, story of my NFL season. It was the Baltimore game where I jammed Houston passing game, but it was obviously Stroud, Schultz, Collins, and not Hutchinson.
Oh, and Silas makes a good point here. We could get a post-buy rookie bump for
great point.
All right. But yeah, I think that is could definitely happen, that we just see. I mean, Higgins did run 40. This was the trend, is he actually did run his most routes in week 5. So
yeah,
then
but
you get by.
Kirk only ran 57% that game.
Oh yeah, so that is why. Oh, that is okay. So that's a benefit to Jaden Higgins, and Noel only a slight uptick in terms of route participation. So it's possible that I have it wrong, and they're just gonna run more Higgins in the slot. But I stand by it. I still think that Noel running the most slot routes would make sense. He's probably like with the bye week integrated in there, I think he's gonna take the biggest step out. But it also, like, Higgins does have that out also of just like, well, maybe they just use him at the slot. Like maybe I'm wrong about this,
which they haven't this year, but.
No, they haven't. But now they've had the bye to work through it. So that is a potentially a thing. But yeah, I think Noel my preference of them. But Higgins I do prefer over Hutchinson also, because it is more likely that he takes on a bigger workload. I think after the bye as well.
Yeah, I don't know. It's one of those weird spots where they're all sub 4K. You could just kind of make the case of like stop trying to galaxy brain shit and just like click on the guy that, and like none of them are going to be popular. They're all sub 4K. Just click on the guy that's been running routes and just caught 2 touchdowns in Hutchinson, even though like it's the least exciting thing you can do. But you do, I think, get more like input volatility in a positive way with Knoll and Higgins, where like maybe, I mean, I guess I can't say it's not going to happen, but like Hutchinson's probably not running more routes than he already does.
Yeah.
Whereas it's more likely, I would say it's more likely that like Higgins or Knoll, that this is like game one of them having an expanded role than it is that it's game one of Hutchinson suddenly running 90% routes or something.
Yeah, I agree with that. I feel like you just made counter points that were counter to each other. I thought you were saying just play Hutchinson because he's the guy who's been running the routes and scored 2 touchdowns.
I prefaced it by saying that there's 2 different ways you could think about it.
Oh, I see. Okay, I didn't hear that part. Yeah, he did. He had scored 2 touchdowns on 3 targets in that game against Baltimore. I don't know. I'm not reading too much into the 2 touchdown game there.
No.
All right, and then Seattle. We do have one more team to talk about. The receivers. JSN, it sounds like he is your favorite pay up option of the receivers on the slate. 7,900 projected for 53% ownership. Is that accurate?
I had 60 with what I ran, but yeah, I have like 75% JSN right now. And on the one hand, I mean, it is a tough matchup. You know, somebody in chat said basically the entire conversation that I've been having in my head happened in chat in back-to-back messages. Somebody who said that Houston's good at taking away what JSN wants to do. And the follow-up was, I don't think anybody can take away what JSN wants to do. Right. He's just arguably like been the best receiver in the NFL. Like this kind of feels like the show that I think you and I did, or I think it was me and Josh, you know, like 5, 6, 7 years ago or whatever, where I said Justin Jefferson was a top 10 wide receiver and people told me I was an idiot. But like it feels like that with JSN now, where he's just elevated to this level where, you know, do you talk about it being a tough spot for Jamar Chase? Do you talk about it being a tough spot for Justin Jefferson? Or do you just click on them and assume that more times than not, they're going to figure it out? And I think that's where you're at with JSN. Like he's constantly open. He's getting like 0.36 targets per route run so far this season. It probably comes down some, but I mean, he's being targeted like he's on the Rams. And he's just being incredibly productive, efficient. So it's kind of at the point with him where like, yeah, I'm sure he's going to have some bad games. You had the primetime game a few weeks ago where I don't remember how, I think he ended up being okay, but like had 1 target in the first half or something like that. Like You're still going to have games where teams do just sell out to take him away, or for one reason or another, you know, he has a poor game, obviously, but he's just one of the best wide receivers in the NFL, and it's a 2-game slate. And yeah, he's going to be popular, but at the same time, like, so is Nico Collins, so is ASB, so is Mike Evans. There's no real obvious like, oh, well, I think this guy's actually going under owned, so I'm going to turn some JSN into him. To me, it's just I'm going to take the guy that's the best wide receiver on the slate and is being owned at a similar rate to the other top options.
My only counterpoint to that would be I don't think he's better than Amon-Ra St. Brown, because I think Amon-Ra St. Brown is also in that top tier of receivers, and then you get the better matchup for Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Better.
Maybe. Okay. I mean, I think it's close. I think you can make the argument for JSC. He's been targeted 5 more times than Amon-Ra St. Brown so far this year. I think Amon-Ra St. Brown has the better matchup with the better game environment. So I guess I break the tie if they do come into the same amount of ownership.
Haven't the Lions played 1 more game?
No, I don't think so. No, Seahawks have a week 8 bye.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It's just the Lions throw more, I guess, because their target percentages are not close.
Yeah, it's just because the Lions throw more, not even because they're low in terms of pass rate over expectation. I guess that they just have the ball more because their offense is so good. They sustain drives.
28.5% target share for Amon-Ra this year, 33.5 for JSN.
Yeah, but then like ultimately that is 50 targets versus 55. So more for JSN, but not by a ton. It's close, but we're kind of splitting hairs here because they're both just great. We're going to get to a lot of both. I guess I just slightly prefer Amon-Ra St. Brown. You slightly prefer JSN. No big difference there.
2.67 yards per route run for Amon-Ra this year. JSN coming in at 4.6.
Jesus, really? I mean, that's obviously unsustainable, but that is insane. 4.6 is that's nuts. Yeah, he's been pretty great. undeniably. But you got to think it's obviously gonna regress at some point. But can't argue with that. That is pretty insane. Cooper Kupp, 4,800 projected for 30% ownership. How much you get in there?
He was showing up 14% for me. He's somebody that I've actually had more than I would like so far this season, but that's not happening today. I'm fine with getting, 14, 15%. Clearly not exciting, but he is 4,800. And you can make the case, I saw people mention it in chat, but like if you did want to say, well, I think Houston just really sells out to take away JSN, then obviously that does open opportunities, at least. Whether he can take advantage or not is a different story, but it does at least open opportunities for Kupp, for the tight ends, etc., for Horton. But also clearly you can play them together, because if Seattle just happens to be able to move the ball, that's good for both of them. So getting to 14% Kupp, no real stand there. He's just kind of a guy, projects for like 40 to 45 receiving yards.
Yeah, seems like I don't have a great stand on Kupp either. Projecting for 30% ownership seems like a lot. So you are getting significantly more than, or significantly under the field on the 30% projected. What are you using as your projected ownership?
18.
Okay, so with 18%, you're still getting 14. My guess is if you use this 30%, you're going to get like 6%. Like you're not going to get much at all of Kupp, which makes sense. I think I want double digits, but not necessarily by a ton. I think there's a lot of stronger plays on the slate. Are you getting to any Torrey Horton?
No, I'm not really getting to like that group of guys in general. Basically I have the same thing to say about him that I do Tesla, and there was somebody else that I wasn't getting to.
The Bucs, Tez Johnson or something.
I had Tez.
You were getting
Cameron Johnson maybe. But yeah, like he's Sean Tucker, like he's fine. He's one of those guys where like if he scores a touchdown, and if it happens to be one of those slates where like every expensive guy goes nuts, then that's a path to him, being in the winning lineup, or if he just obviously like has a good game. But he's another pretty touchdown dependent wide receiver. Like you're expecting so many targets to go to JSN. Seattle's not a particularly pass heavy team anyway. So, it's limited targets for Horton, but we do know that he can run hot on touchdowns. He did it for the first few weeks of the season. So there is obviously upside there. I assume he's going to be somebody that comes in at like 5% or something. And yeah, like he doesn't project well, but he's a wide receiver. If he scores a 40-yard touchdown, then he's good.
Yeah, I think that's about right. I think I'm going to be like, outside of taking a bigger stand, I think it's going to be like my priorities of the cheaper receiver is going to be Noel number 1, Hutchinson number 2, and then like I'm still going to have like a mix. I think I'm going to have a lot of these like cheap wide receivers who are sort of contrarian. So Horton will be in the mix, but not a huge stand for me. I don't think he's going to be. I'm not going to be playing like 25% Torrey Horton, so I don't think it'll benefit me that much if he has a big game. But yeah, he's, like you said, I think he's in the mix just because could have that one splash play that pays off the salary. Like I said though, I think this is probably a wide receiver in the flex slate for me primarily, or like a lot more than usual wide receiver in the flex, because I think there are a lot of those dart throws that are pretty viable on the slate and it's a fairly thin running back slate. So I think more than usual, I'm going to have wide receivers in the flex. Any other notes on receivers?
No.
All right, we'll move on to tight ends. Sam Laporta, I think, is kind of separating from the pack in terms of usage. And I mean, with that Gook out, I guess we could get more of Cade Otton, but starting with that game. So Sam Laporta projected for 58% ownership at 4,300. Cade Otton projected for 36% ownership at 3,700. How much are you getting to of Laporta and Cade Otton?
Getting like 45 or 47% Laporta, getting 23% Otton. Otton's a really interesting one from a projection standpoint, because last year when we had Evans and Godwin out, Otton just became a target monster. In the games where Evans was in and Godwin was out, Otton was more in line with just like his normal production, but his normal production was also a lot higher than it has been year to date so far this season. So ultimately, I think that Otton looks pretty good. Especially, if we assume Egbuka's out, I think that he projects similarly, probably a little bit higher than Shepard and Tez, but it's not and obviously he has touchdown equity being a tight end, but he's still showing up less than some other tight ends for me, including Laporta. But I think that he looks fine. He's running routes constantly. He had 95% route participation or something last week, with Evans out, Godwin out, Egbuka in. He's averaging 90% for the season. So I do think he's going to be out there running a bunch of routes. I think that the truth is probably somewhere in terms of targets per route run, probably somewhere between what we saw last season and what we saw this season. Also last week, he was at 0.29. So you did see the big spike last week. But that again was a game where Egbuka got hurt in game. So ultimately, I think that you see more targets for him than you've seen year to date on average, but probably still less than you were getting last year, just because for whatever reason, he's been a lot less involved this year.
Yeah, this is so I pulled up last year's game log, and you can kind of see Godwin Godwin hurt in week 7. And that is the first game that K. Dotton had 18 fantasy points. And then both, I think, were Godwin and Evans both hurt in the same game? I don't remember what happened there, but they were both out weeks 8, 9, and 10. And it was 29 points for K. Dotton, 22, and then 9. So kind of a down game in week 10, but still a fine game. And then Evans came back, and we saw a huge dip with K. Dotton. It was pretty funny how it was just directly all the other receivers out. All right, K. Dotton's our number one option now. So theoretically, if Egbuka is out and Evans is limited, like you said, we could see a big spike there, but most likely not going to be a huge target share. Most likely going to be more of a empty routes. But yeah, I think he probably is do you think, is he your second favorite tight end option on the slate?
Otten?
Yeah.
No.
Okay. And I say that assuming that Sam Laporta is your favorite, without factoring in ownership, looks the best.
Yeah. I have more Laporta and more Schultz, and then a similar amount of Barner to Otten.
Okay. And looking at the schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed to tight ends, it's a great matchup for Schultz. Seattle's allowed the 6th most schedule adjusted fantasy points per game to tight ends. So they have that going for them. Also a positive matchup here for Sam Laporta. And then you've got slightly below average for K. Dotton and below average for the Seattle tight ends. So how much are you getting to of Sam Laporta, and how much are you projecting his ownership for?
47% at 45% owned. So pretty much right there.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, Laporta looks great. He's being targeted more this year than he has in the past. If you go back to last year, he was kind of one of those frustrating guys where you knew the talent was there, and then he had just enough big games to keep reeling you in for when he would just go out there and be a non-factor. But he's being targeted more this year. You've seen him basically, I think, be the 2 behind ASB. I don't actually have that in front of me at the moment, but I think he's getting more targets per route run than anybody else. Yeah, it's Amon-Ra St. Brown, then the 2 running backs. Montgomery's tied with Laporta. But Laporta 0.23 targets per route run, Jameson Williams 0.17 for comparison there. So you're seeing him, targeted a lot more frequently than he was last year. And obviously it's a good offense, plenty of touchdown equity. He looks very good. I do think that it's a slate where I would guess that to some extent how much you're playing Laporta. I mean, he's only 4,300, so I don't know. But I was going to say, how much you're playing Laporta could also impact how much you want to play the Tesla, Torrey Horton type guys. If you're saving money, you're saving $700 or $600 going to Cade Otton. If you're saving money going to Dalton Schultz more, then there's less of a necessity to go to those cheap wide receivers. So I don't know, at 4,300, if it's making that big of a difference, but I do think potentially that those two things could kind of be correlated. How crazy you go with Sam Laporta, and then how much you need to get to these cheap wide receivers.
That is true. And Sam Laporta, as noted, he had kind of a dip weeks 2, 3, and 4, under 15% target share, but then week 5 up to 25%, and then 21% in week 6. So the target share has moved up a bit for Laporta, even as Amon-Ra St. Brown. I mean, 37.5% week 5, 34.5% week 6, also kind of an increase there. Yeah, so Laporta looking good even at high ownership. How much are you getting to of Kate Otten, and what are you using for the ownership projection there?
I was getting to like 23% with 30% projected.
And that is under the assumption that Egbuka is out. So you even kind of factor in that potential bump in. You're still
That
not
is
getting
also, I just noticed, with a lower projection than I currently have on him.
Okay, good to know. So maybe you'll get some more Otten, but you're getting to a lot of Schultz in a like theoretically good matchup here with Seattle. Looks like this is like 2 tight end slate is kind of what it looks like a lot of people are going to get based on these ownership projections adding up to well over 100% for the tight ends. Dalton Schultz projected for 34% at 3,600. How much are you getting to?
Getting to like 51%. Had him projected for 32. So it's one of the spots where I'm more over the field than most. I just think there's a lot of ways for him to get there. Like for one, he's $3,600 and running 70-ish% of routes on a team that doesn't have a clear second pass catcher behind Nico Collins. So there's just, natural upside there anyway. But then there is, like you and I were talking about with Noel and Higgins, like what exactly do the Texans do without Christian Kirk? And so far this season, in terms of slot participation, it's been Schultz in the slot more than anybody other than Watson and Kirk. So I do think you could see more of, Harrison Bryant and Schultz on the field together, Schultz running routes out of the slot and being, targeted a little bit more frequently than normal.
Schultz, the targets up the past couple of games, 21% in week 4, 19% in week 5. The route participation, like you said, pretty steady. I don't know why it was down to 57% in week 5, but within kind of the standard range of route participation. So I guess that is another angle. There are a lot of different ways this could go. I guess I'm leaning more into the just Knowles, the slot receiver, this use him like that, and continue to run the usual types of lineups. So he's going to get a lot of route participation, in part because that would be the one that I think pays off the most, if I'm right, because Knowles getting so little ownership. But yeah, that is another way you can play. It's just like Dalton Schultz already like has a pretty good role, and that role could just get a little bit better without Christian Kirk. So yeah, that makes sense. Also, what are you using as the ownership projection for Dalton Schultz?
32.
Okay, so not a crazy high ownership projection. And then finally, the Seattle, we have sort of a split tight end room with AJ Barner and Elijah Arroyo, with AJ Barner the clear leader there, but 3,300 projected for 17% ownership. Elijah Arroyo 2,700 projected for 2% ownership. Are you getting to any Arroyo, and how much Barner?
I'm getting to 4% Arroyo with him projected at 4%. I'm getting to 22% Barner with him only projected at 16%. So I'm getting a little bit over on Barner at only 3,300. Arroyo 2,700. I think that there is value there, obviously. Like, he's cheap. He is running routes along with Barner. We've seen both of them running a lot of routes in recent games. Most recently, Arroyo, 52% route participation, 66 for Barner. Game before that was 59 Barner, 44 Arroyo. Game before that was 68 Barner, 61 Arroyo. There is going to be some negative correlation in terms of route participation, I think, between Horton and Arroyo, but it actually hasn't been that drastic. Week 4, 39% for Horton, 61 for Arroyo. That was where you saw the biggest, like, oh, if Arroyo's going to run more routes, this is really bad for Torrey Horton. But then it did rebound where it was 50% Horton, 44% Arroyo in week 5, and then 66 for Horton, which was actually his second highest of the season last week, and 52 Arroyo, which was his second highest of the season. So last week you did actually see that where they were both on the field a good amount. Just putting that out there for anybody, that is interested in Horton. Like, I've seen Horton's name pop up a lot in chat, and I've seen Arroyo's pop up a lot. So there is some kind of relationship there, but it is not completely like cut and dry, one comes on the field, one comes off, or anything like that.
Right. Okay. So you're getting to just a little bit of Arroyo, and how much you say you're getting to of AJ Barner?
22.
Okay, so you're a bit over the field there. Anything else on tight ends?
Nope.
Do you have any takes? Go ahead.
I guess if you're playing the lotto and you really want to go down the Dalton Schultz in the slot path, you could go to Harrison Bryant.
Yeah. Steven, yeah, I know this. Higgins was drafted in the second round, but it was Knoll is the slot receiver. So they didn't select Higgins to be the slot receiver. They were on the same college team, Higgins and Knoll, and kind of the assumption all along has been Higgins is like the hope was that he's basically a Nico Collins clone. Like he's kind of the same body type, runs out wide, and then Knoll is the more natural slot receiver. He was drafted later, but he's the like fits as a slot receiver. So I think with Christian Kirk, the slot demon out, it is Jalen Knoll who I expect to benefit. But who knows how they're actually going to play it.
I mean, you can also just like we're in week 7, you can look at what they've been doing, and Knoll plays the slot and
right. Yeah, exactly. Any takes on defenses?
No.
Yeah, you can play defenses against your quarterback, against the other team, etc. We always have that conversation on these 2 game slates. Always viable. All right, I think that does it. Adam, do you have any other thoughts you want to get out on this game?
If you are subbed to Run the Sims, make sure that you get in our Discord. As Neil mentioned at the top of the show, I mean, you should be in there anyway. That's the easiest place to get notifications when like things aren't working or there's some sort of update that you need. But specifically, as Neil mentioned at the top of the show with the AWS issues, just get in Discord so that you can quickly become aware of anything going on.
That's good note. Also, if you're not already in on Run the Sims, you can use promo code Neil to get 10% off your first payment on any of their products. You should definitely check it out. Great product. Highly recommend it. All right, Adam, appreciate you as always. Everybody in chat, thanks for hanging out. I will be back at, I believe I have it set it up for 5:30 Eastern, an hour and a half before game time. I think I'm sticking with that. I will be covering the 2 game slate once again with inactives coming out for that. And then also I'll be doing both showdowns, starting, of course, with the early one. And then after lock out of the first game, I'll continue on just briefly to talk about the showdown of the second game as well. So I'll be covering all that later. But please do like the video and subscribe to the YouTube channel if you have not already done so. Sign up for Run the Sims as well. Thanks, everybody. I'll see you later.